Hello there. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is that time. Obi Wan Kenobi has arrived on Disney Plus. We have the high ground as the first two episodes have just dropped as a part of Star Wars Celebration to kind of kick off the whole event. We just got the first two episodes of Obi Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus. And there's a lot to talk about with these first two episodes because this is something that I haven't really been super hyped for, because obviously I love Star Wars, I love the prequels, I love Obi Wan Kenobi as a character, but just based off the trailers didn't really get me that excited, and I just didn't really know what to expect from the series. And that's actually a good thing, because watching these first two episodes, most of what's in the trailers is in the first 10 to 20 minutes of the first episode, and a little from the second episode as well. So there's a lot of surprise and a lot of things that I didn't expect to see play out in the series in just the first two episodes. So that's something I really loved. And another cool thing obviously about this is that this is the first time in 17 years that Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor are on screen as Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So that's obviously really cool as well, especially for people who grew up with those movies, watched the prequels when they first came out, and it's just a whole nother level of nostalgia. There's a lot of nostalgia here in these episodes, but I love how they balance out the nostalgia with actually doing a nice, new, fresh story with the characters that we already know and love. So anyways, guys, we are going to go ahead and break down the first two episodes of this series on Disney+. But before we do that, I do want to give a quick spoiler warning if you haven't seen them yet, so definitely make sure to go check out the first two episodes on Disney+. But for now, guys, let's jump into this and break down Obi-Wan Kenobi, Episode 1. So part 1 starts off with a 4-minute recap of the prequels, which obviously makes sense. There's a lot to get people caught up on, especially if you haven't watched those movies in a while, specifically with that relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, a little bit with Luke and Leia, and everything else going on there. So glad they did the prequels recap. That was nice right there. But then we actually get, speaking of the prequels, a flashback to Order 66, which was awesome because we got kind of a glimpse of that in the Book of Boba Fett when we saw that flashback for Baby Yoda, but actually seeing it here, more a fully realized version of Order 66, with the clone troopers and everything going on there. That was really, really cool. And the only unfortunate thing is that after all these Jedi were killed, we were left with just some children, the younglings, and different younglings than were murdered in Revenge of the Sith. So I guess these ones aren't going to have too much luck either. But it was still cool. It was still cool getting that Order 66 flashback, because I didn't really think about that being here, but now that I do think about it, it makes sense that it would fit in here, and it does, and that was awesome. But now we flash forward to present day on Tatooine, where we have the Grand Inquisitor, the third sister, aka Reva, and the fifth brother, so this group of Inquisitors, they are hunting down a Jedi, because that's what Inquisitors do. They are Jedi hunters. And the Grand Inquisitor, of course, was one of the main villains in Star Wars Rebels, the animated series, so it's cool seeing his live-action debut here in the Obi Wan Kenobi series, and I really enjoyed seeing him in action here. But one of the first things I was surprised by here in this episode was with Reva, aka the third sister, because she was a character that, based off the trailers, I knew she was going to be a big character in this series and play a big role, but I didn't really think I'd be that interested in her, but I actually am, because she's such a cool character. She's very temperamental and aggressive and determined and obsessed with Obi-Wan Kenobi for some reason. We don't know what that reason is, but I'm definitely excited to find out. But she's a very interesting, complex character here that we see in these first two episodes. Now, as for Obi-Wan Kenobi himself, he has given up the whole Jedi life. He's now working at a meat market. He lives in a cave. He's still having nightmares about Anakin. And it's actually really heartbreaking where in this scene, he tries to speak to his master Qui-Gon, and because that was part of the prequel recap at the beginning, was that Yoda was saying that, I'll help you talk to your master, and you can see that he's trying to do that here. He wasn't successful, but I feel like at some point during the series we are going to be able to see Obi-Wan actually talk to Qui-Gon's Force Ghost and get Liam Neeson's return. It's going to be awesome, and I really hope and really think that that's going to be what happens. But the next day, Obi-Wan, he wakes up and he goes to the farm and kind of just sitting there spying on young Luke, who's now under the care of Owen Lars. And Owen confronts him later about this, and he's like, yo, you're creepy, so don't do this. Like, yeah, he may be a Jedi, but I don't want him to turn out like Anakin did. So there's that whole problem going on there. But after he leaves, the Jedi that was at the beginning of the episode that the Inquisitors were originally hunting, he finds Obi-Wan, and he's like, oh, Master Obi-Wan, we need to get out of here and, save the day and everything. And Obi-Wan is just being a Debbie Downer, and he's like, no, just run, just go away, we can't call attention to ourselves and everything. And that's going to be a big driving force for this series, is that Obi-Wan has given up, and you're going to need to see him regain that hope for the Jedi and for the Force. He's given up his connection to the Force pretty much until the second episode when we see him actually use it. But it's really interesting. It's an interesting character arc that I'm excited to see play out. But probably one of the biggest surprises for me was Princess Leia. She plays such a huge episode in the series, or at least in these first 2 episodes, and I didn't even know she was going to be in the series. But we have a young 10-year-old Princess Leia, and so we get to see her on her home world, and she doesn't really want to be a princess. She wants to go off and climb trees and be adventurous and everything, until of course that leads to her getting kidnapped. So probably not the greatest idea, but it ends up happening. She gets kidnapped, and that sends us off on a whole other long list of stuff, because then her father, of course, Bail, he comes directly to Tatooine to meet with Obi-Wan and directly ask him for help in retrieving his daughter, and reluctantly Obi-Wan ends up agreeing, and we get this really cool ending to the episode where after we see that Jedi that we saw earlier has now been hung in the center of town, which was a really disturbing sight, and especially probably helped motivate Obi-Wan even more. We get to see Obi-Wan go to the middle of the desert, unbury his lightsaber, and he heads off to now go save Princess Leia. And that was a really nice ending to the first episode. And honestly, this first episode was great. I think I preferred it to episode 2. But episode 2 was still pretty great as well. Which we're going to go ahead and jump into Obi Wan Kenobi episode 2 right now. So Obi-Wan has now arrived on Daiyu. And as he's walking through the streets, I love how we actually have a quick cameo from Tamira Morrison, who of course plays Boba Fett. But he had a quick cameo as a clone. It was like a homeless clone. I doubt it's like Rex or any of the actual clone characters that we know. But just cool to see him play a clone in live action. And it was a really cool, fun cameo. But also, as Obi-Wan is going through the streets, he's told about this Jedi that helps people. And we get to see that it's Kumail Nanjiani, so that's really cool. I've been excited to see his character in the series. And he's pretending to be a Jedi. It turns out he's actually a fake Jedi using magnets. Basically, he's a scammer, just scamming people for their credits and stuff. And his name is Haja Estri. So Obi-Wan, of course, he threatens him and is like, this is not good, that you shouldn't be doing this. And so Haja ends up giving him directions, and Obi-Wan ends up finding Princess Leia. But things definitely don't get easier from here, because meanwhile we have the Inquisitors. They're having their own internal spat, as the Grand Inquisitor ends up basically kicking Reva out of the Inquisitors. And so she gets kicked out, and she ends up setting her own bounty on Obi-Wan's head. So Leia sees this, and she's like, oh, you're a bad guy, you're the reason they kidnapped me in the first place. So she runs away from him, which, after this whole journey together, you'd think she'd be a little more reluctant to just be like, oh no. But anyway, that happens, she runs away, and she actually ends up falling off a building. And Obi-Wan has to tap back into the Force, and of course ends up saving her, but that's probably the first time he's used the Force in over a decade, which, this is a pretty big deal. Although they still don't have a way out, so Haja shows up again. He actually, even though he's a scammer, he's able to help them out, give them some directions, find an exit. But I really love this moment when Ben is talking to Leia and he says something about like, oh, you remind me of someone, and of course he's talking about her mother, Padme, and that was just really cool, and how she has no idea who he's talking about, but that's her mother, and that was a really nice moment. I really enjoyed seeing that. But then Reva actually attacks Haja, and so she ends up finding where Obi-Wan is. So she hunts him down, and we get another really emotional moment where she reveals to him that Anakin Skywalker is alive and he is Darth Vader. So this was a big reveal that obviously we already knew, but this is the first time Obi-Wan is finding out about this. So obviously it's a pretty emotional moment for him, because that was something I completely forgot about until it was brought up at the beginning of this episode, that he thought Anakin was dead. But he's not. And so we have, again, Reva, the third sister, is just hunting him down, trying to chase him, until the Grand Inquisitor shows up, and he tries to, calm her down, as he has throughout this whole episode, and she ends up stabbing him with a lightsaber, and he falls to the ground, and is he dead? We don't really know, did he just die? I doubt it, because if they're going with canon, the Grand Inquisitor doesn't die until 5 years later, in Star Wars Rebels. So, I feel like he's not dead. Darth Maul was literally chopped in half. Anakin literally was burnt to a crisp, had multiple limbs cut off. They were fine. So, I'm assuming he'll be fine. Just toss him in a bacta tank or something. So, I'm assuming he's alive, but it definitely serves as a nice moment to show how powerful and how big of a threat Reva, the third sister, really is. And possibly she's even going to be our main villain of the series. But speaking of villains, the end of the episode is just this shot of Anakin Skywalker in the bacta tank, all bald and bruised and dried up and burnt and yucky. But it's so cool, because that is Darth Vader. And I'm assuming that next week's episode we will be seeing the return of Darth Vader. And actually what's even crazier is next week's episode is episode 3, which will already be halfway through the season, which is really unfortunate that we're already that far. But at the same time, I love these first 2 episodes, and I'm really excited to see where things go from here. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think about Obi Wan Kenobi's premiere on Disney Plus? Which episode did you prefer, episode 1 or episode 2? What were your favorite moments, favorite surprises, and where do you think things are going to go from here? Let me know all your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments below. And thanks so much for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I keep it up to date on everything that goes on in the Star Wars life.